We're back now. During the State of the Nation address, President Ramaphosa stressed that the country is open for business and often highlights that growing the economy is a shared responsibility, one that tends to lean on the arm of business. Just how business-friendly is 2025-26 national budget? Khulekani Mathe, CEO of Business Unity SA, joins us from Cape Town via Zoom alongside Vusi Mavuso, CEO of Business Leadership SA. Thank you so much for your time, Vusi and Khulekani. Whenever I try to gauge the reaction of business, I look at the Rand, and the Rand seems to be quite calm. Vusi, would you say that all is calm at this point, at least considering that the budget was finally delivered?
All is calm, largely, and I really think it was a very difficult balancing act for the minister, and I think he really did a commendable job. So it was a largely positive budget. I don't think that there's anything in there that we actually didn't anticipate, as much as the postponement of this current budget speech was due to the VAT increase. We knew as a country that there aren't many avenues that we can actually explore to try and actually increase revenue. And it was very interesting for me the way he noted that, raising revenue raising VAT by 1% gives us about, I think he said 28 billion
Yes,
rands,
28.
while raising PES-UN only gives you about 14 billion rand. So it's very interesting, and it tells us the state of the economy. It tells us where the country is at. It tells us where people are at. It actually tells us that there are a shrinking number of people who are working full-time jobs who earn enough to pay PES-UN. And I really think that that is something that we actually need to pay attention to.
Yeah.
Hence, where he started was actually very important, saying that, yes, the cancellation of the previous budget generated a lot of discussion, but the bigger and important discussion we need to be having as a country is how do we grow the economy, because that is the only way in which you meaningfully and sustainably address the challenges that we're actually facing as a country.
Khulekani, on your side, can you please everyone, and do you think that the budget did well to try and please everyone? I know that you can't always please everyone, but I guess majority of stakeholders here.
Thank you, Azinati. And look, I largely agree with Vusi that it was a difficult balancing act. I just think that on balance, this budget was actually very disappointing. Disappointing in the sense that we heard words that obviously, economic growth is important, but there's not enough in this budget that suggests that we are committed to driving economic growth as a sustainable source of revenue. What we see, of course, is commitment to affecting us more over a 2-year period, while the outlook for growth in the medium term remains 1.8%, which was the case before. In that sense, I think it's very disappointing. I should also just say that if one takes this budget based on today, based on the expectation and all of that of today, one would commend the minister. But actually, we are where we are today because over a period of close to 15 years now, the government did not take the decisions it ought to have taken on both the growth side of the economy, but also on managing expenditure. There's a line in the minister's speech referencing spending reviews that the government has been doing since 2013. None of those have been implemented. Those spending reviews have been showing that there are programs that are underperforming, but there has been no will to act on those programs. So there seems to be a commitment to spending, but not sufficient commitment, one, to curbing wasteful expenditure and all of that, as well as to growing the economy so that we can sustainably afford the programs that we have.
It's quite interesting because in the previous panel that I had, one economist said that to him it's missing credibility. There's this optimistic, picture of economic growth, 1.9% for this year, 1.8% on average in the medium term. Vusi, what do you make then? What's your reading of the alignment of the actual pillars that were tabled, that alignment together with the optimistic growth forecast for the economy?
So for me, if we were looking for a budget that would grow the economy, we probably maybe are gonna have to say, how do you actually do that? You
Yeah.
do that by growing. You do that by ensuring that you get investment into the country. How do you get investment into the country? Get investment into the country by ensuring that the trading environment within which business is operating is a conducive environment, because it's a pointless exercise for us to continuously say that we are open for business when the environment within which business is operating in this country is not a conducive one. How do you get the trading environment to be conducive? You get the trading environment to be conducive through reforms. And I don't think that the minister could have actually done more in terms of trying to stress the reform agenda, because that is the most sustainable way in which we lift ourselves out of this economic rut that we actually find ourselves in. So I really, therefore, and I don't know what other hat would have, what other trick he would have actually pulled out of the hat, to try and ensure that we are serious about driving the economic reform agenda, as or rather the economic reform agenda. So he anchors his budget on 4 pillars, maintaining macroeconomic stability, implementing structural reform, which they've done very well, and I think they've demonstrated serious commitment to the structural reform agenda, accelerating infrastructure investment. And when you look at where they are actually putting their infrastructure investment, that trillion rands is going to network industries. Business in this country for the past 5 years has been saying, if you want to grow this economy, the bottom line, where you start is the basics. The basics are energy, transport and logistics, water. Telecoms has been the only network industry that has been functioning as it should. So the trillion rands is actually going to those 3 network industries. So I really think that we probably maybe are going to have to cut the minister some slack, because I really think that he did exactly what industry, what investors, what business has been asking for, for quite some time, in terms of make sure that we spend the money, we focus our energy, time and effort on things that matter. Things that will actually give a signal and give confidence to the international community that indeed South Africa is actually focusing on the right things. And Godongwana rightfully says that we could have done a lot, in previous years. But then in terms of where we find ourselves, I really think that the attention that this budget pays, it's actually paying attention to precisely the things that we need to be paying attention to.
The minister also highlighted the progress that has been made from Operation Vulindlela since its inception in 2020. He noted a number of aspects there: the freight logistics framework, water use licenses, a backlog being cleared. So a lot of things have been done up until this point. Khulekani, do you think that that could provide a proper solid foundation for this economic growth that they are gunning for, outside of kind of new investment into those spaces?
I fully agree with my colleague that the minister said the right things, and that the commitment to the reform agenda is commendable. I do want to take a hard line though on this issue. We're here because we've been cutting Minister of Finance after Minister of Finance some slack for things that should have been done. We've got to be harder on not just the Minister of Finance, because actually, he presents the budget on behalf of government. We've got to be harder on our government on really acting on some of the difficult issues that face us all. I just don't see that commitment to really reining in expenditure, which is why we then resort to raising tax over the next years. Yes, while I commend the minister, but I do think I'll give an example of why I think we shouldn't really be cutting the government more slack. The Pierre Committee in 2014 came up with a report. It was meant to review state-owned entities. Came up with a report that we have over 700 state-owned entities, and it said that we don't need all of them. We have got to rationalize them and make sure that we keep the core ones that we absolutely need. Has anything been done to rationalize? Absolutely not. Instead, we have more state-owned entities, now than we had back then. So again, I make these examples to say we understood each of the times and cut the government some slack, and look at the hole that it has got us into. So absolutely agree and commend the minister for the commitment to reforms, but I do think we need to be harder because now the taxpayer has to bear the cost of inaction over the years that could have been prevented.
And of course, we know that a very, very big pillar of boosting economic growth is private-public partnerships. The minister also mentioned regulations that are coming online. Busi, what do you make of that move at this point?
Yeah, so I think that is quite positive. We've been calling for that as business for quite some time as well, to say that to the point that Godongwana is making, that we actually need to do reforms in as far as SOEs are actually concerned, some rationalization exercise. But I think you are seeing that wheel turning quite slowly, so though, because then you are seeing a shift in this country and by this government where they are really moving from this monopoly, monopoly SOEs, and they're actually opening up and liberalizing, some of these sectors which were previously monopolies, and they're actually bringing in the private sector. We know, for instance, when it comes to transmission, and the minister spoke about energy, we've done a lot of work and we've seen a lot of progress in as far as energy is concerned. A lot more megawatts are actually going to come into the grid. They're going to have they need a transmission infrastructure over which they should actually run. We have actually said we need about 400 billion rands, of infrastructure investment for transmission, for the 14,000 kilometers of transmission lines that we actually need to put down. So government obviously don't have the strong balance sheet to can actually fund this themselves, and they are opening up, that industry. The network statement that Minister Creasy spoke about, or rather introduced and tabled in December, speaks to exactly that. We know Transnet is busy putting together, or rather it's the Department of Transport is busy setting up the PSP unit. So I really think that we actually are seeing a shift. Is it quick enough? No, it's not. So that entire notion that Godongwana is actually talking to, of really looking at how we best utilize and what we do with our SOEs, there is movement in that direction. It is not at a pace that we'd actually like to see. So Regulation 16, therefore, of the PPP framework becomes important from that perspective, to say that let's increase PPP investment in this country. PPPs have not been a normal and I think ordinary feature through which we have been doing investment, because it has just been so difficult to do PPPs in this country. So making sure that you actually make this amendment to Regulation 16, therefore, is a cog in ensuring that the much required infrastructure investment is actually going to take place.
All right. Well, we do have to wrap up the business conversation there. Thank you so much for your time, Busi and Godongwana. And that was Busa CEO Godongwana Mate and BLSA CEO Busi Mavuso with their insights on the budget. Up next, as we know, politics and economics are a married couple, and with the GNU itself seen as an awkward marriage of convenience, just how do we read the 2025-26 national budget? Political analysts Daniel Silk and Asanda Ngwasheng share their analysis after the break.